My name is Dustin DeFrates, and we are here with Chris Wurr, and I am super stoked about what we're talking about today. I guess a little bit about me. I'm a real estate entrepreneur, and I always make the joke that if I wasn't running 7 companies, I'd be drinking. I need to keep my brain entertained. I need things to stimulate me constantly in order to feel good about life. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you because for me personally, I've been on a spiritual mind, body, soul journey for the past 5 years. I went to Canyon Ranch in Tucson, Arizona, and I had a spiritual experience on Sunday morning at a 9 a.m. Meditation. And after that, I went full force trying to figure out what just happened in my brain, why that happened, and what I could do to have that happy feeling over and over and over. So Chris and I have been friends for some time, and I'm excited to help Chris extract some of this brilliant information that he has in the brain. So Chris, go ahead and maybe give us a background.
Yeah, so my background is that I've had to reinvent myself so many times, whether it's been health issues, whether it's been making simple changes, whether it's learning how my emotions have worked. I've always been deeply introspective. I've wanted to learn more about myself. And the more that I learned about myself, the more that I started to realize that the body isn't separate from the mind. The mind isn't separate from spirit. And the body, mind, and spirit, all 3 of them are connected. And I always have a saying that if you go deep enough on any topic for long enough, you will find divinity in it. And so for me, I've gone so deep on so many different topics, and now I want to be able to give back and share that wisdom and also be able to tie back how the body, the mind, and spirit work together and what are some practical applications that our listeners can also use to improve their own lives.
That's beautiful, Chris. Well, I'm excited to get into it. So why don't you kick us off? We're here to talk about a lot of our conversation is going to be related to the mitochondria, but maybe you could give some background on how we get to or why the mitochondria might be important for our daily habits and life.
Yeah, so the first thing we need to understand is that the body is an electrical body. And so we have electrical signaling that controls all of our functions in our body. And Robert O. Becker has some great work in the body electric. And he basically was studying salamanders. And he noticed that depending on different currents, they were able to regenerate themselves. And the human body is actually very similar. If we have the right electrical signaling, the body can heal itself. If we are in tune with the right electrical signaling, we'll have better thoughts, and we become more in tune with our own divinity.
Let me see if I can bridge that. So Robert O. Becker is doing a study on salamanders. Salamanders are the animals that can reproduce their body parts naturally, but you're suggesting that you can accelerate that with electrical stimulation. Is that the idea?
That's the idea,
okay.
Yes. And one of his big findings was that the body has a DC current, a direct current.
A direct current, okay. I could go down a rabbit hole on that one, but okay, yes. Okay, so then when stimulated, the salamanders were able to reproduce their tail or their leg faster than the alternative, and so I think we're introducing the theory that electrical charges within our body allow us to do other types of magic, like growing a new tail. Is that fair?
That's fair, yeah, and understanding that the body really, like electrical currents do play a big role. We have different ions in our body. These different charges create different signaling in the body. Our brain waves, that's how our neurons communicate. And we have neurons in our brain, in our gut, in our heart, all over the body. So these are vitally important to signal what the body needs to do. It's vitally important to signal how our thoughts get translated. So a lot of the body, it comes down to electrical signaling, which makes sense. The electron is the smallest piece of reality, and at the end of the day, the electrons we're made of electrons, and they control our body. We're subject to the laws of electricity.
Okay, I'm tracking. So we have a bunch of notes, and I'm trying to make sure it's so easy to go down rabbit holes on these things.
It is.
These are things that we've both been studying for a long time. But Chris, you're a subject matter expert here for sure. So let me make sure we don't get off topic. Tell me, so I think we were going to talk about the energetic exchange, right? And so when you go ahead and tell me a story maybe about human interaction and how, let's say, emotions or that electrical exchange between human interaction charges or attracts or detracts from the ability to communicate and human exchange.
Yeah, so a practical example, and you can see this every day, is everybody can be laughing and joking in a room, and as soon as somebody with a very negative energy enters the room, there's a difference. There's a shift. You can feel it. We've all felt it before. But everything is energy, and even something as simple as opening up a window to the fresh air, opening up a door can completely change the room. And so, and likewise, the opposite can happen. When a very positive person enters a room can be kind of dead, and then all of a sudden, all of this energy, we feel good. We're getting energy from that other person. Typically, we will feel better when we are absorbing energy from another person. And this all comes down again to the electrons, and as we're going to talk about, the mitochondria.
I tell my 8-year-old and my 4-year-old every day, Diego and Andres, you make your own energy, right? And so I know that I am personally affected very heavily by other people, and I am absorbed into other people's and their emotions, and I care deeply about that feeling, and I want everyone around me to be happy. But in the theory of you make your own energy, let's talk a little bit about how that manifests, or maybe I could tell a story first. So I am going through a disgusting, terrible, nasty divorce. I was served a civil lawsuit on my birthday, and things were threatened to keep me away from my kids, and so I have gone through some of the most complicated lawsuits that could ever be created based upon agreements, that some people may or may not hold to. And so despite these terrible things in my life, and for the past 5 years, I've been in a practice of trying to find the peace, not necessarily in myself, because the peace in myself is hard to find in some of these really tumultuous times, but the peace outside of myself, and tapping into energy in practices like meditation and qigong and tai chi and some of the spiritual work, some of the psychedelic work, and these things that have allowed me to shift my energy, maybe temporarily, maybe permanently. But I think what we're talking about is that every time you're able to shift your energy a little bit, your body has a memory of that, and you should or could be better off, happier, more energy by teaching your body that in the previous process. Is that fair? Or help me understand how my goals of being happy despite tumultuous times allows energy to function.
Yeah. So what we need to understand is that energy is always flowing regardless. So whether on the outside of our bodies and our minds, whether on the outside everything can be chaotic, but also at the same time you can be creating a center within yourself where the energy is flowing very coherently, where everything is creating your ideal state, because we're always creating in the moment. We're always creating in the now. And our mitochondria absolutely reflect this. And so it might be a good transition point now to kind of give a brief background of the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are essentially, we can think of them as the quantum electron processors. So we understand that our body is electrical in nature. And so at the end of the day, we need something to process this flow. And that's where the mitochondria come in. And they are known as the powerhouses of the cell. And what is exactly a powerhouse is it basically distributes the energy. It creates an electron and proton gradient. And essentially, these electrons now can flow in between this gradient. And so that is how everything that we intake, whether it be sunlight, food, water, air, it all has to get funneled through the mitochondria. And then essentially the mitochondria are going to create something called a reactive oxygen species, ROS. And essentially these ROS are electrons that got outside of this gradient. And that is a signal. It acts as a signaler to say either something is going really good. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. Not all stress is bad. It can be a good signaler, but oftentimes when something is going wrong, especially in modern society right now, all sorts of things can be going wrong. We have these literal energy leaks where these electrons are leaked out of our cells. So we have less and less energy, and as we age, that's why you'll notice we have less and less energy to do as much as we can, whereas a child can find entertainment and attention in anything. Okay. And their mitochondrial health is exceptional.
I think I'm tracking. So then in my example of being able to be happy on a daily basis, the child doesn't have all of these outside influences. And I think that fear is one of those things, the ego or, the nervousness or anxiety or the things that many of us live with. That's actually holding down our ability to create energy within ourselves is I think what you're suggesting. Is that true?
Absolutely. So while we focus on all of these external factors such as food, what is the right diet, I need to exercise this way, what we neglect is the psychological stress. And the mitochondria very well reflect this. And there's many studies, and we can link to some of those in the notes. But some of them, such as the placebo effect, we know that the placebo is very, very effective. And that is simply thinking that a medicine is going to produce some sort of outcome. And when you tend to think that that outcome is going to happen, the way that our energy works, the way that our mitochondria works is they're listening to that. And they will literally direct these different electrons, and your body will become healthier through those thoughts. And likewise, when you are under extreme amounts of fear, anger, some of these more destructive emotions, they're literally destructive to that electron-proton gradient and that electron flow, and you're completely disrupting the energy in your mitochondria. And there's also studies that measure that and that show that when you have these emotions, it's one of the biggest energy leaks that you can have. It's what ages you the quickest. And the mitochondria will signal to something called the telomeres. And the telomeres are essentially showing that you can think of them as a marker for aging. And so as our telomeres shorten via signaling from the mitochondria, we start to age. And so the mitochondria control all of this. And if we're not actually losing energy, because again, you need some sort of electron, you need this ROS to act as a signaler to actually tell the telomeres to shorten. Well, if we're in these positive states, and that's kind of where that spiritual connection comes in, if we remain in these positive emotions, these positive states, our mitochondria, the physical body, responds.
I think I'm tracking. So to kind of, you're a smart guy, Chris, and I'm going to try to visualize a couple things. So the telomeres, if I understand this correctly, are tools within the cell to recreate the cell, to regenerate the cell. And if I understand physics, biology, human biology specifically, I think every 7 years you do not have the same cell in your body. Is that somewhere close to, is it 7 years or 9 years, something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, cells turn over all the time. Yeah.
So then the telomeres are the arms or the legs inside of the cell that pull new cellular matter, right? And the length of the telomeres, that is how long it's going to be able to pull new cellular matter. Is that fair?
Yes.
So then what you're suggesting is that the mitochondria has an electrical capability of triggering those regenerative cells to say, hey, continue regenerating, you're cool, or you're not very cool, you're going to need to stop regenerating. Is that a summary?
Yeah, that's a fair summary, because everything comes down to that electrical signaling. So the body can't really do anything without some sort of energy flow. And so most diseases, pretty much all diseases, come down to a lack of electrons, a lack of energy. And when we're producing high amounts of energy, our body can heal itself. Our body can reproduce the way it needs to reproduce.
And then there was something else that I heard you say in the placebo effect. So, we're getting technical, and then we want to also kind of bring it back to the non-technical. In the end, if you believe it, then it is true. Is some the theory of a whole bunch of quantum science, right? What you're suggesting as a placebo effect. If you believe it, then it is true, and your body will act as it's true, and then it potentially manifests itself as being true. So there's a book that I loved that actually kicked off some of my journey called the Psycho-Cybernetics. I don't know. Are you familiar with Psycho-Cybernetics? Yeah. And so he suggests the success mechanism. And so it's basically being able to say, hey, I know where that finish line is. It's right there in the future. And I know I've seen someone get to that finish line before. Therefore, I can get to that finish line. And if you have that belief inside of your body, then God damn it, you will get to that finish line because you know how to do it. And so that seems to be what you're suggesting. And in the placebo effect and the mentality is that a fear signal creates stoppage and blockage, and you will have a very hard time running your body with stoppage and blockage, right? But the feeling that things are cool, that things are going to be cool or are cool in the future, allows your body to signal to itself, hey, everything's cool, live as long as you possibly can. That's a simple summary, yeah?
That is. Fear is our biggest block versus oftentimes we understand physical toxins. We understand if we eat contaminated food, if we drink contaminated water, if we're breathing air that's of very low quality, we understand how this can be a blockage. And what I want our listeners to understand is that our own emotions, if we're not allowing the emotions to be used in a positive way, that it affects our mitochondria on a physical level. Many times we think we can hide our thoughts in our head. We can be thinking poorly about somebody. We can be angry in our minds. Well, this is going to show up. It's going to show up in cellular stress. You might, just being in the bad mood, it's going to reprogram you. The mitochondria are going to create more stress, and by definition, you're going to have more of that stress in the future because the mitochondria are listening to our thoughts. It's acting upon the electrical signaling that we're producing.
That's amazing, and just this is the business side of my journal, and this is the emotional side of my journal, and so on the other side, a meditation encouraged me to write love letters to those that I have the largest conflict, which happened to be my ex-wife and my father-in-law at this point, and so I wrote down all the reasons why I love these people, and when the next day I had a completely different energy about how I'm approaching some of these complications that I'm going through in life, and so it's exciting to hear you describe that because it does change the energy flow. And we're going to get into some of these things in the next episodes, but the connections between me and you, actually, before we go into the connection, we'll go into this. So the connections between me and you is an electrical charge. And so that seems to be when somebody walks into the room example, right? Tell me more about, well, if you like, let's talk about the electrical charge between two individuals.
Yeah, so we exchange energy in many different ways. So just being in proximity towards somebody can be a very powerful way to share energy. But we also have these natural ways that we share energy, such as eye contact, physical touch, kissing, and sex. And so these are four of the main ways. And then obviously as we go from eye contact to touch, to kissing, to sex, it gets stronger and stronger. But we see this in many cultures. In many cultures, if somebody is looking and having the wrong eye contact with somebody, it can be considered disrespectful. And it can also be considered disrespectful if you're not making eye contact with somebody. But we all know this on an inherent level as well. And we've seen somebody, you can make eye contact with somebody that you love, and it's just so energizing. You feel great. And likewise, when somebody has ill intent, you feel that in the energy of their eyes. And so as you go up the scale, you exchange energies in different ways. And so the more energy that you can give to somebody, typically that's going to feel better because we all our bodies selfishly want energy, and it makes us feel great. And that's actually one of the biggest love mechanisms is how much energy can you share with another person.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's, talking about love, life, and the pursuit of happiness. That is some of the things that I've come to in my dating life is it becomes about everybody has positives and negatives, from the other person's perspective, especially, right? And so it's about what negatives you're willing to tolerate within your own persona, right? But then more so, it's about what you're willing to give on an ongoing basis. And that what you're suggesting is any type of giving, whether, different love languages, gifts or time or touch or these types of things. But those gifts is the exchange of energy, and that will prop up or promote someone and create new, So, okay, let's say we gave, I think we missed a topic that I thought was super important. So if we are giving our energy, is our energy unlimited, right? And so if I go into a room and I say, hey, everybody, my name is Dustin DeFrates and I'm so happy, and everybody gets energy from my excitement, am I losing energy? And how do I maximize the amount of energy that I have in my body?
Yeah, so this is very important. And we have an unlimited amount of energy in the world that we live in. And in fact, an electron contains just a small amount of space in this world contains more energy than we would ever need to power the entire planet 1,000 times over. And there's new research that is coming out and showing this exactly, like the quantum field, the energy of the quantum field. So to answer your question is, we can never give enough energy. Oftentimes we're not giving enough, even if we feel like we're giving a lot of energy, but if we perceive that as draining us, then it will drain us. But if we're giving without an expectation of return, the energy is always there. And the more that we ask for energy, the more energy that we're going to get.
I love that. Giving without the expectation of anything in return. And so there's so much psychology and that's what we're really talking about, is how the emotions are bridging to the physical reality. Go ahead.
And I want to relate that back to reality, because we see this all the time with the body and the way that the mitochondria work and the way that the body works. So when you fast, all of a sudden your body is now better prepared. It produces more stomach acid. It is now better prepared when you do eat food to completely absorb all the nutrients in the food. Now, if you just ate a big meal, you try and add different food to it, all of a sudden the digestive system, there's different bacteria, they're not digesting, you get bloating, you get backed up, it's not as good. When you fast from oxygen, when you breathe a little bit slower, the body responds by actually increasing the size of your endothelial cells. Your blood vessels expand and get bigger. Your ability to produce oxygen and to transfer oxygen throughout your body gets greatly enhanced. And so that's kind of the idea of when you give without an expectation of return, when you are not tied to an outcome, when you can see the finish line, all of these things start to come connected and start to come back to the body, because you're giving the body the nutrients that it needs. You can see that you know you're going to get food, you know that you're going to get air, but in the time, you're also giving it the ability to rest and recover and to prepare for what's coming in advance.
I'm tracking. Yeah, it's there's a couple relatable stories that I'm going to avoid telling, but I think that what I'm hearing you suggest is that you have an opportunity to create energy. The energy is unlimited, but you need to create space for recharging, I guess, is one way to describe the ebb and flow of energy, right? So you can give, but you need to recharge. And I think we came up with the 7 things that actually can create more energy, right? And so maybe I can rattle these off and you decide which ones are most important to talk about. You said breath, and so let's go briefly into breath. Maybe I can tell my own story. I had a meditation recently, and I found that when I was thinking in my logic brain, I was holding my breath. And when I was thinking about things that were emotional, happy, uplifting, I was breathing, right? And so tell me more about breath and how that interacts with your energy.
So oxygen is what we're primarily breathing. And when we breathe in oxygen, oxygen is very electronegative. And so it has the ability to create a lot of energetic flow in the body. And we need this. And so every cell needs this oxygen. Every cell needs all these electrons. And so when we breathe deeply, we're able to give our mitochondria the electrons that they need. At the end of the day, it comes back to the mitochondria, all this electron flow, it comes back into our body. And so like you were mentioning, breath is it's the most important way that we get energy. And there's also many others. We need water, we need sunlight, we need exercise, we need food, we need relationships, and we need sleep. All of these things are vitally important. And if we can focus on those areas, we can really create our mitochondria and set it up for success.
I like that. So the mitochondria, so bringing it back to, I got a statistic that I remembered I wanted to share. Mitochondrial dysfunction is implicated in a wide range of diseases, including Alzheimer's disease, estimated to affect over 6 million Americans, Parkinson's disease, affecting over 1 million Americans, and type 2 diabetes, affecting over 37 million Americans. Studies have shown that the mitochondrial dysfunction is a significant contributor to aging. So we talked about dysfunction and the telomeres and being able to recreate the cells, and then I think what we're really saying, in if your blood has to serve too much excess fat, right? Then your mitochondrial is serving the fat as opposed to the brain cells, or let's try to bridge a couple of those things. So why would mitochondria create a bridge to diabetes?
Yeah, for example, so any disease that we're talking about, it's a lack of energy created from the mitochondria. We have to understand that they create the ATP. And if we have enough ATP, it can go to the right areas, and our organs, they all function in a certain way. Now, to answer why does it create diabetes, for example, and we can often blame it on sugar, we can blame it on these different things, but at the end of the day, that's affecting the mitochondria. We got to go to the root cause. It's affecting the mitochondria in a certain way to not produce enough energy. So very oftentimes we're creating some sort of chronic stressor. A chronic stressor being some sort of toxin, some sort of lifestyle habit, or even, like we were mentioning, fear, anxiety, doubts, that are creating a lot of energy blockage that our mitochondria cannot now function as well as they need to function to create the energy that it needs. And it's going to prioritize energy going to different places.
Okay.
Your heart is going to get the priority of the energy. Your brain is high up on the list, right? Your lungs are high up on the list. And so as we create less and less energy, we have less and less energy to share with the rest of our body. And this is very oftentimes why things like our skin health is very reflective of what's going on inside of our body, because our skin is going to get less prioritization than our heart, our brain, our metabolism.
And I think I hear what you're saying. There's not necessarily a direct link between this mitochondria and that disease, but then the body is not able to perform from a downline perspective, and so disease or dis-ease comes in when the body's energy can't be distributed to the appropriate places to make sure disease, cancer, breast cancer, any type of cancer doesn't start forming, right? Because you need energy in order to fight the cells that are the good guys and the bad guys, right? Is that the theory? Is that it?
Yeah, and when in regards to specific diseases, is very oftentimes we're also creating specific stressors. So a very easy example to think about is how our muscles work. Is we're actually going to stress our muscles in such a way, a beneficial stress. So the body, again, we have beneficial stress as long as it is a low enough intensity. We want to be stretching ourselves to a certain level of degree, right? Now, what happens is our recovery isn't good enough. So if you're lifting weights and your bicep is growing and you're feeding it with protein, everything's working as it should. Now, in disease, I could be doing that same stressful activity of weightlifting from the bicep curl that I was doing. And so likewise, we have so many stressors that maybe we're not sleeping well enough. We're worried about bills. All of these things could be showing up in our lives, and we're not even noticing these energy leaks. We're not realizing the points that we need to make.
Energy leaks is something I think we should go to. We need to take a break here, but let's go into energy leaks next. And I'm excited. Thanks, Chris. Let's keep this going in a few minutes. Chris, before the break, we were talking about there's 7 things that allow energy to be increased within the body so that you can give more energy, so that you can get more energy back, right? So I'm gonna rattle these off. The top 7 things that you can do. Make an assumption that all of the science is there and you can do the research yourself, and all of these things are absolutely true because I'm certain they are. But the 7 things are in ranking order: breath, water, sleep, light, nutrients, food, exercise, and emotions and relationships, right? So we talked about breath, and I'll maybe bring up, this is Joe Dispenza, is a guy that I follow. I like him a lot, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he has an association with the Heart Math Institute, and there's an app called Inner Balance. And so this thing here, if anyone can see it, you press this button and a little blue light starts flashing, and it hooks up to your phone, and you attach this to your ear. And what my goal here is heart coherence, right? And so my job is to figure out how to match my head space, my breathing, to my heart, right? So if you can get your mind, body, soul, breath, heart, and brain all functioning in the same wavelengths, then you can improve your energy, flow of energy. So can you talk briefly on why that is?
Yeah, why specifically that breathing is able to sync the brain and the heart?
Yeah, and well, why the sync? Let's make an assumption that that's true. So the goal is to do meditation and breath work in order to sync the brain and the heart, right? The breath and the heart. But what does that do? How does that create more energy in the body?
Yeah, so anytime we are creating a coherent flow, right? You mentioned Joe Dispenza, and he always talks about, heart-brain coherence. And what heart-brain coherence is essentially doing is that all of these electrical signaling is they're acting in coherence. Instead of when you have very jagged waves and you're creating all of this dissonance, this energy can't flow as smoothly. It's going to have to jump through so many hoops. It's going through hard mediums. It has to travel through the blood. Everything takes longer. And so when we are incoherent, when we are in congruence, and you'll notice this too, not just with the mind, the heart, and the brain, but you'll also notice it when your emotions and your actions and everything that you are is in congruence, it's in coherence, that energy just flows. And people can sense this. When you are thinking one thing, you're in an absolutely terrible mood mentally, but you have this fake smile. People can sense that a mile away, and so everything that we do, the more coherence that we can create, whether it's in our heart, our brain, with our breath, with our light, everything starts to become, how incongruent can we become?
So it's just signals. It's just your one body, your brain will signal, your heart will signal, your breath will signal that everything's cool or not cool. So it's basically what we talked about in the beginning of the episode.
Right. Everything starts to be one.
Yeah.
You start to unify yourself with the divine. You start to unify your body. Everything starts to become one.
I love that, and I read something that's everyone's carrying around water these days. 20 years ago, people drank Diet Coke. So like now everybody has a bottle of water. So let's talk about how water, or making sure that you're drinking good water, helps that energy.
Yeah. So what's important to understand is that water is able to hold certain charges, and these certain charges you can also think of them as memory. And there's different studies on this. There's different work. I won't necessarily go into that on this podcast. But the important thing to remember is that as water needs to flow in and out of the body as well. And so if we're not constantly renewing the water within ourselves, well, we're just recycling old water. And just like you wouldn't want to be showering in bath water and then shower in that same water again and then shower in that same water again, it's going to create a lot of toxins. You're not going to get as clean. And that's why we need to do things like sweat and go to the bathroom and get rid of water. So I want to make that point, is that water also needs to go out of the body. It also needs a flow. And then when we're replacing it, like you mentioned, we're drinking this water these days. When we have a high quality water source, right, it's like we're now showering with this fresh water. And so that's why a good water quality source is important, because now all of a sudden our body can cleanse itself again. The water can hold more electrical charge, more energy. And so we're basically energizing our body with better water. We're getting rid of the old, in with the new.
So I won't go through all of these points individually. Some of them are a little bit more obvious. You got to have good sleep, and we won't go deep into that. I will, in another podcast episode, we'll kind of go into practices and things that you can do to get better sleep. Light, guys, there's so many studies related to light, and I encourage everyone to Google and look these things up. But just briefly, let's highlight why light is so critical for the mitochondria specifically.
Yeah, well, light is energy. And so if we are inputting good energy into our body, good natural energy, things like sunlight is obviously a very important factor for human health. And so when we get sunlight is naturally attuned to the mitochondria. The mitochondria are naturally attuned to the sun. It's a two-way connection. And so that's a very beautiful way that we are attuned to. Another natural source is fire. Fire is also going to be very, very beneficial for the body. The body is able to use firelight in so many different ways. Now, when we are under any artificial lights, they're not as tuned. We don't have those same frequencies, and we don't have the spectrums that we don't see, the infrared and the ultraviolet rays, and we're just getting bombarded with these blue lights, these green lights. And it's not to say that they're necessarily bad, but in our modern society, we're definitely over-tuned to them. We're bombarded with screens, and so we just have to be careful and use light as a tool.
I love that. Nutrients and exercise. And so I don't want to talk about eat good food, eat healthy food, and eat a variety of food. For sure, MCT oils and avocados and these healthy fats are critical for the mitochondria. Is there anything that you want to touch on related to what, like if somebody, let's not say they're eating McDonald's every day, but what is the highest level things that you should be putting into your body in order to increase mitochondria specifically?
Yeah, well, every food has a different purpose. So, for example, many fruits are going to be very hydrating. Different plants are going to give you maybe different ions that you need, things like calcium and magnesium. So everything is designed to what does your body need? And if we give our body what it needs, then it's awesome. But at a very high level, plants, fruits, and animals. Those should be your main sources. Nothing that is synthetic, man-made, different chemicals.
So then basically what you're saying is get as close to the original source of the cow or the plant, don't do a bunch of shit to it to ruin its nutrient qualities. So processed foods, stay away from processed foods, eat as close to whole foods as possible.
The closer that you can get to life, right? A fresh vegetable, a fresh fruit, a fresh animal, the closer you are to actual living life, typically the better it is going to be for the body.
Yeah, and most people don't know this, but your apples are sometimes 6 months old and worse, and the degradation of the cellular structure of those nutrients is destroying the nutrients.
Right. So a 6-month apple, it's going to be worse than a 5-month apple, going to be worse than a 4-month apple. And then obviously the best apple is going to be the one picked directly off the tree in your backyard that's already attuned to the soil environment, everything that you are putting yourself in.
I had a stat in here that's fun to talk about here. the VO2 max. Well, we'll get into that later. But your body is degenerating by 1% a year after the age of 30, right? So then that's the same thing with the apple. That's the same thing with these living organisms, that you're just generally degradation happens unless you can reverse that energy flow. Yeah.
Yeah, and the beautiful part is, and we'll go into this on later episodes, is that you can absolutely reverse that energy flow. You can reverse age. You can always gather more energy, and in fact, if we're living a very harmonious life, then aging is going to pretty much stop.
Tony Robbins says that if you're 40 years old today, then you will live to 140 as long as you maintain a healthy lifestyle. And so I want to see my kids, you know, so I'm going to do everything in my power to figure those out. I'm excited to continue these conversations. So then we had nutrients, exercise. We won't go deep into exercise because everybody kind of already knows exercise is important.
I think the one important thing on exercise is that we very much understand exercising the muscles. But what we don't understand is that our lungs need exercise. We need to be inhaling deeply, exhaling deeply, at least a few times a day. We need to massage. Our liver needs a little bit of movement, right? Whether that's through, and we naturally get that through exercising our muscles when we're jumping, when we're running, when we're doing these activities, hanging upside down. We are also exercising our internal organs. When we breathe deeply, our diaphragm is creating a little bit of movement inside of our core, inside of all of these organs that are within us. And so that's just a very important, because when we have poor posture, when our back is not straight, when we are not breathing as deeply, our internal organs aren't going to get as much exercise as they need. And this shows up. I see this all the time. It's very, very common to see people's core. We have more and more bloating, more and more intestinal issues, more and more sexual dysfunction. All of these things can be traced back to a lack of energy flow.
Trampoline for the lymphatic system. And so, yeah, I agree. I can't wait to go into all those things. And so then the last one that I wanted to touch on, we went into it, but the emotions or the feeling of energy, or going into a room and connecting or not connecting, and the positive exchange of, so I love the idea that do all of these other things. There's always a level to unlock, another level to unlock in life, in pursuit of happiness and health and wellness. But it's exciting to be able to suggest that all of these things, the ones that we, are supposed to already understand, like nutrients and sleep and, exercise, but emotions and putting yourself in a positive environment has such a massive, massive opportunity to make or break you. We talked about, I'm building real estate communities, and we have different types of communities, people that are, on the beginning of life or lower income level, and then people that are very successful and want to experience the things that they have the ability to afford, and then people that are in that, at the end of their life. And so towards the end of their life, people that don't have connection to, let me give a statistic, they're women that have an age at the age of between 35 and 40 live some 10 years long, and have a child, live some 10 to 15 years longer than women that had a child. Their last child was somewhere around 25, 30, whatever that was. And so those statistics, or having the will or the desire to live, gives a chase of energy. The ability to find something in the future is the success mechanism from the book Psycho-Cybernetics, right? So knowing that I'm going to be around to see my children actually makes your body decide it wants to be around long enough to see your children's children's children. Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it kind of goes back. We'll dive into the actual mechanisms behind this, but the more we push, the more that we ask for, the more that we desire, the more that our body is also going to adapt to that beneficial stress. And so absolutely, if a woman has an increased will to live, an increased desire for whatever reason, and maybe it's the kid, maybe it's something else, it could be maybe a passion that they have.
That's fair.
But as they are creating this more desire to live, the body will respond by also giving you a body that is more capable. of living.
I just got goosebumps thinking about that topic. My grandma was the most blessed soul in the entire world, and her passion was helping other people. So she was the first person to bring a casserole to, someone who had a baby or in any of these different life events within her church infrastructure. But then as her body aged and she had the inability to get in and out of a car as easily, I just watched her health instantly degrade from a beautiful, wonderful, happy person to quite the opposite very, very quickly within 2 or 3 years. And so that's just a certainty that these things are true. And I hope that our listening audience, explores these deeper. We're gonna do a bunch of these, and we're gonna go deep into the science behind why these things are true. I like to understand the everything. I don't believe anything unless I can say, yeah, that's my new truth. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee the truth. And so I've dove deep into some of these topics, and I'm excited to dive deep in these topics with you. So the next 6 episodes, we're going to go through and actually dissect why some of these things are absolutely true. Is there anything else that you would like to add to high level conversations?
No, that all makes sense. And I think there's so many interesting stories that we covered on, and I'm excited to dive in and give people maybe some more reasoning and understanding. And then that way they can apply, it's like a universal truth. You can apply this universal truth to whatever problems that you have, and you can start to see and start to detach from your own problems and dissect it in a logical way and understand how your body, mind, spirit, like you're saying, it's like, why did her health, we all kind of intuitively understand that, but then it's like, okay, if we see ourselves slipping as well, how do we stop that as soon as possible, right? Like there's so many applications and really we're always kind of fluctuating in a different way. And so just giving our audience tools and applications and different stories and showing people how do we apply this knowledge, because it will get kind of technical at times, but also relating that back. At the end of the day, all I want is our users to be able to use this information, our listeners to be able to use this information and improve their own lives, right? Because if you can't improve your own lives with this information, then it's really not good. So.
I have the privilege. You guys don't have the privilege of knowing what the 6 episodes are, and some of this stuff is just it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing on how fast you can create improvements in your body. And so, like people in meditation, I mentioned meditation a couple times, and it's a pain in the ass. I don't want to spend 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 minutes breathing, doing breath work. Mm-hmm. Breathwork, Kundalini yoga, that's a pain in the ass, So I don't want to. There's a Sunday service at Buddha Bella that I love going to. It's at 11 a.m., but it's a lot of work. It's just like a workout, just fully with your lungs. And so I guess what I'm saying is that those practices have allowed me to see the direct benefit in my own personal life, right? And being able to go through like these tumultuous times that, divorce, financial struggles, all of the above. But I wake up happier with more energy every single day than I ever have in my entire life. And I'm 44 years old. I feel better than I ever have in my entire life. And it's because of these practices. So I'm excited for people to, see bits of the truth or understand the science behind the truth. So they want to see what practices can get them into that truth.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yes, we've become addicted to versions of ourselves who we were yesterday, who we were 1 week ago. And to create a new change, that can be one of the scariest things we go through. And our body, it doesn't want to experience fear. It's naturally going to shy away from creating those new changes. So, it's beautiful that you were able to make those changes and feel better. And hopefully everybody can feel that way too.
It is beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate your time and look forward to our next round.
Yeah, thank you, Dustin.